Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have no impressions whatsoever except for family members. Impressions that won't make sense to anyone other than like 6 people.
You got the Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I do have that's like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, that's right. It's getting there. All right. Raiders have granted Derek Carr permission to talk or visit with the New Orleans Saints. I don't understand why they didn't give Jameis Winston more of a run. I don't understand why they were connected to Andy Dalton, also attached to him at the hip. Jameis looked okay to start the season. I thought that. And Derek Carr, who is definitely an improvement on Jameis Winston, but I really don't understand the situation in New Orleans. I do think of potential landing spots, that is one of the better ones for Derek Carr. I think that tying yourself to Cris Olave is probably a good idea because that guy is going to be a superstar. They've got some other weapons, obviously Alvin Kamara. We'll see what we get out of Michael Thomas. But do you think that the Saints make sense for Carr?
You saw moments out of Rashid Shaheed down the stretch. You saw moments. You saw moments from Juwan Johnson last year as well. And so, yeah, they have some pieces there in New Orleans. It's worth noting that Dennis Allen was the Raiders head coach when they drafted Derek Carr. Now, Dennis Allen was ultimately fired by the Raiders, so you may be like, you're going back to that well. But, ultimately, I do agree. And also, this is a defense that this is a team that will play indoors in the turf. If you're Derek Carr, it's a good defense that you're playing with. And you think about that division, that's as good a division as you could land in after having to face Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, and the Denver defense. Now you go to who knows what Carolina's going to do? Who knows what Tampa Bay is going to do? At the moment, it's Kyle Trask and Sam Darnold, right?
If the Saints got Derek Carr, then all of a sudden they're minus money to win the division. They're shorter than the field, I think, just because of the state of the rest of the division, to your point. And I do think that Carr, Aaron Rodgers, who we'll get to Aaron Rodgers in the darkness in a second. But
right.
I do think that Derek Carr, outside of Rodgers, he's the quarterback you most want if we assume that Lamar Jackson is off the board. I think that Jimmy Garoppolo needs to be seriously downgraded as a quarterback based on how good Brock Purdy looked. So I think Carr is the guy that you want outside of Rodgers.
He is by far the biggest name and most viable franchise-ready pro quarterback that is available. Right, to your point, assuming that the Ravens franchise tag Lamar Jackson and that he ultimately, one way or the other, works his way back to Baltimore. And we had Mike Florio on earlier in the week talking exactly about that, and that we'll see how it manifests itself, whether he gets franchise tag, exclusive or non-exclusive and what have you. But Lamar Jackson does not currently have representation, so it's hard to see him, maneuvering that. He's likely back with the Ravens next year. I agree with you on Garoppolo as well. We'll talk about that in a second. Rodgers, we'll get to him as well. Derek Carr is based on both age and availability because he's 100% available. We don't know if Rodgers is coming back. We don't know if Rodgers will be, wants to be traded, because he's got the trump card of hey, I can just retire.
Yep.
Right? So Derek Carr is the best, youngest quarterback that is also 100% available. So I agree with you. And I think you can win with Derek Carr.
I agree. I think you can also win with Ryan Tannehill. And the Tennessee Titans, they name pass game coordinator Tim Kelly as their new offensive coordinator, promotion from within. I think the Titans, who have largely been written off, the Titans are in the bottom 6, bottom 7 for Super Bowl odds next season. I don't really understand that. I think that, another year with Treylon Burks, who I think is really exciting, and then Tannehill being healthy, I think that this offense could be a little better than people expect.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. They always compete. Yeah, I mean, again, Malik Willis wasn't ready for prime time last year, but I think they'll have Tannehill back, and so we'll see if they can help develop Malik Willis. But I agree with you. It's going to be it's a solid defense. It's once again going to be a very winnable division. I mean, the Jaguars had to beat them in Week 17, and and they had to beat Malik Willis. And so we like the Jaguars, and we think that's an ascending team. But the fact, you wouldn't sit here and go well, there's no way the Titans can get past the Jaguars next year.
Yeah. I think there's the idea that the Jags are going to own this division now. They've got Trevor Lawrence. I don't think the Jags are going to be like the Patriots in the AFC East under Brady and Belichick. I think that they are the best team. in the AFC South, but certainly they will be beatable. And yeah, I wouldn't be writing off the Titans consistently every year. Like, I thought that maybe the best coached game of the entire season was what Mike Vrabel did against Kansas City in primetime, where ultimately they lose that game against the Chiefs. But he just pulled he pushed every right button. They always play hard. They always overachieve. Yeah. They're always a team that everyone thinks, oh, they'll go under their win total, and then they always, unless they get injured, they compete.
And by the way, so Tim Kelly was the passing game coordinator, so they're keeping basically the same system. They're upgrading him to offense coordinator. And obviously, as long as Derrick Henry's there, this is going to be a run-first offense. But you mentioned Treylon Burks. How about my guy, Chiga Okonkwo, who came on down the stretch as well, the rookie tight end from last year. So suddenly there's a couple of pieces, and maybe they draft somebody this season, or they add a high-quality free agent in the wide receiver. Like, Tim Kelly being the passing game coordinator, now being the offensive coordinator, makes you feel like maybe they do want to open it up a little bit more, especially if Tannehill is back under center, which is what we expect.
Yep. Okay, the Vikings are hiring Steelers linebacker coach, former Miami head coach Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. Yeah. I think that this is just, there's only upside with the Minnesota defense.
It's a home run move.
Yeah, and look at what Flores did with Miami's defense last season, and then how much they fell off, I think, relatively this season. I think that Flores, in terms of his defensive chops, I mean, there's no doubting what he's achieved, and you can only go up as the Vikings defense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, they're going to have to fix the personnel, but just in terms of scheme fit, I mean, like last year, the Vikings just did not blitz. They had the 8th lowest blitz rate in the NFL. Meanwhile, as you think back to those Dolphins teams that you mentioned, when Flores was in charge of the Dolphins, they had the 4th highest blitz rate from 2019 to 2021. Why do we care about that? Because it just means, like, in terms of, could the Vikings be a viable fantasy defense? Potentially, right? Because they're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to try to create turnovers and sacks. And so I just look it's much more of an NFL story than a fantasy football story. But I think it's a home run move for the Vikings, who obviously haven't figured out on the offensive side of the ball. Defense is what costs them. Like, everyone wants to kill Kirk Cousins for the last play of the playoff game against the Giants.
Kirk Cousins was great in that game.
Yeah, he had a bad last play where he threw short of the sticks. I get it. You know, like, hey, why don't you throw a long ball to Justin Jefferson and try to see if you can come up with a 50-50 miracle. But whatever. Kirk Cousins, 100%, that loss was entirely on the Vikings defense. Daniel Jones did everything he wanted to do, and, like, it was clear that the defensive side of the ball had never, like, watched a lot of Giants tape. And, you know, you heard quotes after the game like, wow, Daniel Jones was a lot faster than we thought. Watch the game. Like, what do you mean? Like, it's not like they suddenly wheeled out this brand new offense for the playoff game. Like,
yeah. I don't understand as well. I know that the personnel isn't great on the Vikings defensive side, but at the same time, like, they have Danielle Hunter, Zadarius Smith, Harrison Smith, Patrick Peterson had a really good season. Like, there should have been, I think, enough talent that should have been a more competitive defense, and not a defense that made Daniel Jones look like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yep.
Exactly right. Should have been a lot. I mean, it's a home playoff game.
Yes.
Play with a little pride.
Yep. Exactly, particularly when you think about what the Giants did the following week, where they looked completely overmatched against the Eagles, and the Vikings were a team that were competing for the 2 seed until the final week of the season. Let's get to Ezekiel Elliott. He is expected to take a large pay cut to remain with the Dallas Cowboys. What do you make of Zeke?
Listen, I'm looking forward to seeing this because, you know, that day is coming for me very soon when I have to take a massive pay cut just to stay at NBC.
Yeah.
By the way, it might be tomorrow, just so you know. But anyway, so I'm fascinated to see how this pay plays out, especially because as it relates to Tony Pollard. Right now, the other piece of this report is that they're expecting to franchise tag Tony Pollard. And I think if Ezekiel Elliott were back, like, ultimately, we don't care about the money. Right? I mean, like, if whatever Zeke makes, if he makes less, the fact of the matter is, for our purposes, if Ezekiel Elliott's on that roster, they're going to use him. Like, and they'll use him in a similar way. You know, I think you would, what we had over the second half of the season, every week we would rank Tony Pollard above Ezekiel Elliott, and that'll be the case going into next year, assuming both guys are back with Dallas. But this does somewhat limit Tony Pollard's upside. I think he's a borderline top 12 fantasy running back, top 10, top 12 fantasy running back. But if Zeke weren't there, he's top 5.
Yeah, I suspect we may be reaching the point, if Pollard comes back entirely healthy from the injury, which we expect him to, that if he is back in Dallas, that just his level of production is just going to become so overwhelming to the point where he needs to be the lead running back clearly, and then Zeke maybe is still the goal line back, which is going to hurt Pollard from a fantasy perspective. But Zeke, he's not likely to have the same just a sheer amount of touchdowns that he had last year. So I think that Pollard is still someone you can draft pretty confidently.
This is just kind of a lazy comparison, but you know where I could see it being next year is I could see it being kind of, and not like, it could be like Alvin Kamara to Mark Ingram back in the day.
Sure.
Not like last year, but like, Alvin Kamara was clearly the fantasy superstar, but Mark Ingram got enough touches to be sort of flex-worthy usable, especially when he would fall into the end zone, and also used enough that sort of annoying, if you had Alvin Kamara. So just kind of that, I could see that where, Pollard's clearly the one, but Zeke has enough of a role, because I just think if you're Ezekiel Elliott, right, and you say like, hey man, I'll take a pay cut. Like I understand the economics in the NFL. I understand what we need to do. I'm happy to take a pay cut so that I can remain a Cowboy. I want to be a Cowboy for life. All that stuff is great. But I could see him then saying, but if I'm doing that, where I'm getting the ball, right? Like, yep. I'm not taking a pay cut to then just sit on the bench and cheer him on.
Yep, no, absolutely. Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers, who plans to attend a darkness retreat where he will contemplate his future before making any decisions. He said on the Pat McAfee show, I've had a number of friends who have done this and they had profound experiences. This is just the content fiesta, Matthew. I actually do a darkness retreat every morning before looking for prop bets. And I come out of the darkness thinking that Kenneth Gainwell over 19.5 rushing yards might be a good bet. So I'm fully supportive of this from Aaron Rodgers.
I too do a darkness retreat. It's usually about midnight and ends around 8 a.m. Yeah.
Oh,
or when my kids get me up.
This is great.
It's a darkness retreat. I have so many questions about this. Like, okay, first off, why? But if you want to do this and they've had profound results, okay, fine. Why tell us about it? And the answer is because Aaron Rodgers is a lot of things, but one of the things he's really smart. And he completely understands, like, this is a way to get people talking. This is a way to get guys like us and every other show is going to bring this up and talk about this. And it's just like, just do it, man. Like, it's just like, do you think he's purposely leaning into the weird stuff that, like, I want people to think I'm weird? Like, I'm just like.
Do you think he's got like a publicist saying, Aaron, you should talk more about ayahuasca, you should talk more about darkness retreats?
Hey, it's the Super Bowl. Everyone's going to be talking football this week. You're not in the Super Bowl this year. Here's a way to keep your name going. You know, darkness retreat. Yeah. Aaron Rodgers and the Darkness Retreat, by the way, is a band that I would see.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to go to break when we come back.
Whatever. This is real quickly. I don't care how much darkness he's in. Whatever. He's playing football next year. He's not going to the Hall of Fame the same year as Tom Brady. He was playing football next year.
There you go. And a reminder that you can get the Draft Guide bundle from RotoWorld. Every season is draft season. You can use the QR code on your screen to download the RotoWorld Draft Guide, promo code Berry. All right, when we come back, Cris Sims is on the set. We will talk everything around the Super Bowl, and we're also going to talk big hats.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.